Bryant, question from Wayne Bryant, please.
Should children be denied an education if they don't have the MMR vaccination?
This is this week's suggestion from Sandim Makara, former chairman of the BMA, that children who hadn't had the MMR vaccine should be excluded from school, because otherwise measles was going to take hold among children who had been vaccinated, and this was the only way to make sure that the society as a whole was free of measles. Paddy Ashdown, do you think children should be denied entry to schools unless they've had the MMR jab?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think you should take it out on the children. I think that is exactly the wrong way to go, nor do I think, as has been proposed in some circles, that there should be compulsory MMR. I don't believe in the idea of compulsory administration of medication. I think that is a fundamental infringement on our civil liberties. At the same time, I do think that those who have argued against the MMR vaccine, and there are some very notable doctors who have got a very great deal to answer for. And I hope that every parent will see it as their duty and in the best interest of their children to administer the MMR vaccine, which will certainly save us from these kind of diseases in the future, and must save huge amounts of real misery amongst children and others.
When in the Victorian era they tried to introduce compulsory smallpox vaccine, there were riots in the streets in the north, weren't there?
So too.
Dr. Liam Fox.
Well, I don't know whether I'm mellowing or Paddy is, but I've never agreed with him as often as I have this evening. I think it's absolutely right. You don't take it out on the children, but you do have to educate parents, especially young parents, about the damage that measles can do. Now, in the 10 years that I was practicing in medicine, I don't think I once came across a case of measles. Most young doctors haven't seen measles, and parents don't have any fear of measles. Yet the encephalitis, the brain infection you can get with measles, can leave your children deaf or blind, or it can even kill them. And the smaller the number in the population who are immunized, the greater the risk to everybody else, which is the point that was being made. So what we need to do is public education to parents about the risks that they're putting not only their own children at, but also all the other children as a consequence of their actions. And get back to the idea of public health, which we used to have, which it wasn't just about you. It was also about the people who live around you and the safety of those who lived in your community.
But you know Sandy Makara, and he was a distinguished chairman of the BMA. What was he up to then when he suggested this?
Well, it is an opinion which exists in parts of the medical profession.
Right, okay.
I don't agree with that opinion, because I think it goes too far.
It's the same people, Liam, isn't it, who want smokers not to be treated in NHS hospitals on the grounds that it's their own fault that they're ill.
Or people who are overweight to get surgery. But we've just got to be rational about this and telling people what the risks are, trusting people to behave sensibly when the facts are put in front of them, and not treating them like idiots or children.
Yes, but then there are other people who have other facts to put forward, and these are people who swear, and I have a very good friend who is in this category, who swear that when their 15-month-old boy had the MMR injection, he was never the same since, and he's been diagnosed as autistic. And there are a lot of families out there who feel very, very passionately about that. And although the medical evidence we keep hearing is against them, you cannot convince a parent who had an otherwise healthy child who turned into a completely different child at 15 months after they had the MMR injection. You cannot deny those people.
So you think what? That there should be no compulsion?
So I think there should be a choice. There's no compulsion at all. I believe it's compulsory in America for school-aged children.
And in some European countries.
You, sir?
As a doctor myself, I feel it's a doctor, actually, with his research paper, a gastroenterologist, I believe, who caused this problem in the first place with MMR. And if any doctor follows his example and is so unethical as to force treatment on a patient, then they shouldn't be within the medical profession.
What did you think of his research and his conclusions about MMR?
I think his research was too small, it was badly done, and it's been thoroughly discredited since. But again, the media whipped it up into a large frenzy, causing a huge health scare and giving credence to stories that even medical journalists probably knew nothing about.
What do you say to Fiona Phillips's friend, for instance?
I would say that the case is unproven, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong in a toddler, and it just may be coincidence, as it seems from the research, that they develop autism at the time of MMR.
Okay, if that case is unproven, then and lots of other people who express similar stories, then how is the case for MMR proven?
Jan Roy, what do you think about the compulsion? So,
I don't agree with compulsion, but I personally think that the gentleman over there is absolutely right, that it was wholly irresponsible for that doctor and then for the media to take that story forward. So it destroyed trust in the MMR vaccination, and a lot of people have suffered as a consequence. What we need is better education. I think every PCT has got a responsibility to better educate the people who go to doctor's surgeries, etc.
the woman in green there.
When I was 14 months old, I had the diphtheria inoculation, so we're going back nearly 60 years. I went straight into a coma, and I developed meningitis of the spine and the brain. I nearly died. I was saved by this newfangled drug called antibiotics at that time. And my parents, therefore, actually investigated this with several doctors, and apparently even at that time, 60 years ago, there was doubt about inoculations, vaccinations, and that other children had become seriously ill after having the vaccination.
So what do you feel about this idea of compulsory MMR?
Definitely not.
Do you think it should be encouraged, MMR?
I don't think that case is proven, no.
Okay. Man up there, yes, you said. Yes.
My wife and I, we agonised about giving our 2 young children the MMR. No vaccination is 100% safe. There's the question, we're talking about trust. We don't know who to trust as the public. Tony Blair wasn't prepared to say whether his own children had the MMR. Same with Gordon Brown, he hasn't answered. How can we expect...
He said
he may have done now, but he was very reluctant to do so. And very much we find again and again the political class saying, we want you to do as we expect you to do, and not actually... keep the same standards as self. It's fine if you've got money to send your children to private school. You know, you can avoid those things or send your children to other things. We actually researched getting 3 separate injections because of the fear, and we weren't able to do it. And the NHS had no interest in helping us whatsoever.
Okay. Max Hastings.
It's got to be right to persuade rather than to compel. That parents have always got to have that right to choose because it's their child's life. I suppose the other thing where I think Jan Royal made an absolutely fair point, that there's nothing more irresponsible in the media than to push scares about health, because the trouble is it's something we don't ourselves understand. We're completely the prisoners of medical science, because if we're told that ourselves, or worse still, one of our children has got a given condition, we just have to believe that the doctors know what they're saying and what they're doing. And if doubts are raised in our minds about whether in fact these doctors do know what they're saying or what they're doing, then that's a pretty serious business. So it's got to be persuade, but parents must keep the choice.
Mike, you talked about this question about the media's attitude earlier, and there's this question of so-called balance in the media, and 99% of the medical profession think one thing, 1% thinks another thing, and both views are put on as though they represent equal weight within the evidence, and that's not balance.
No.
Okay. Let's...
More airtime, not the sensible view.
We've got a few moments left.